Can you speak to um, the efforts to increase diversity in universities, which I think is embodied in this DIE effort of diversity, inclusion, and equity programs? Where do they go right? Where do they go wrong?
Okay, let me tell you, first of all, this may surprise a lot of people. I am opposed to affirmative action. And I think that what it does is it labels people by their race, by their religion, and by their national origin. Precisely what we don't want people to do is be pigeonholed in those categories. The reason that affirmative action has become the way that universities decide on who gets admitted is because historically, people in what's called marginalized groups, blacks, gays, Hispanics, have been discriminated against in the admissions process. Now, what I have suggested is that instead of affirmative action, and by the way, here's a prediction. The Supreme Court is going to abolish affirmative action. There's a case pending, a Harvard case. There are two cases joined together, one of a public university and one of a private university. The private university is Harvard. I predict that the Supreme Court will vote 6-3 to abolish affirmative action. It is, on its face, it is a violation of equal protection of the law. Some groups are favored because of race or ethnicity. It is a classic violation of equal protection clause. When affirmative action was approved, the deciding vote was Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. She wrote a very famous opinion in which she said, I hesitate to vote to affirm the notion of affirmative action because it's such an obvious violation of equal protection. But we have an urgent problem in the society. We are not educating our members of racial and ethnic minorities, and we have to try to get them into our colleges. So I think it should be approved for 25 years, and it should in 25 years it should have performed its role. Well, it hasn't, and the 25 years is coming up. I think it's 3 or 4 years left. The Supreme Court is going to abolish it. You can take my word for that, because it's such an obvious violation of equal protection. Why did affirmative action come into play? Because the secondary and elementary schools are so bad. Public secondary and elementary schools are so bad. Why are they so bad? Partly because of the control that the teachers union has. Randy Weingarten runs the public school system in the United States. And what I have suggested is that the effort should be to, this is an emergency, it's a national emergency, to improve the quality of elementary and secondary education. And one way to do it is to hire teachers who are fabulous teachers rather than necessarily members of the union. Mm-hmm. I have come to oppose public workers' unions. I am a very strong supporter of unions in the private sector. Why do I think there's such a difference between unions in the public sector and the private sector? In the private sector, management is bargaining with its own money and with the money of shareholders. In the public sector, there's only one side. There is the teachers' union, and then there's a school committee that is dealing with the taxpayers' money, not their own. And so it's a very skewed power balance. So as supportive as I am of private sector unions, I am in opposition of public sector unions. They're very destructive. And I think without the teachers' union, teachers who are really skilled will be able to get jobs. They would not have to worry about the seniority of teachers who long since have given up really creative teaching. And we have to improve the public educational system. I had, my late wife and I had a classmate. We have a son who's now 44 who went to the public schools in Cambridge. He has a friend, first name Eugene, who was a black kid from Roxbury, whose mother understood that the schools in Roxbury were terrible, the schools in Cambridge were pretty good. He lived in our house Monday to Friday, and he went to school with Isaac in the Cambridge public schools. Mm-hmm. Elsa and I would show up to school committee meetings when there was bargaining between the teachers union and the school committee. The teachers union objected to our being there. We argued we're taxpayers. We have a kid in the school, and we have his best friend lives with us and goes to school with him. We have a real interest. And the school committee walked out of the bargaining session. The city council then reconsidered its vote, and they voted that citizens, taxpayers, parents of kids in the school could not show up to these negotiation sessions. I thought that was absolutely outrageous. But I understood why, because these contracts are crazy. No sane municipality should enter into some of these contracts. So I have become an opponent of the National Teachers Association, the Cambridge Teachers Association. I don't think there should be unions for public employees because there's no real bargaining going on. And I think that the public school system will never be improved as long as the teachers are unionized.
So that, to you, is at the core of the problem that results in the kind of inequality of opportunity that affirmative action is designed
Correct.
to solve.
If the educational system in the elementary and high school levels is improved, we wouldn't need affirmative action. These kids would get good educations.
So from all backgrounds, poor kids in the United States will get good education.
Correct.
If public unions are abolished.
Correct.
Yeah, but do you more...
And incidentally, the postal service would probably work better too.
That's a whole other conversation. Yes. But do you, at the core of the problem of the inequality in universities, that diversity, inclusion, and equity programs are trying to solve is the public education system.
Correct.
Of secondary education.
Yes, correct. Elementary and secondary.
Elementary and secondary education. Well, then, is there use? What is the benefit? What is the drawback of DIE, diversity, inclusion, and equity programs at universities like Harvard?
It's an affirmative action, basically. Okay. And what it does is it allows the system of elementary and secondary education to be bad because they could say, oh, we got our kids into Harvard. Yes, but you haven't educated them. And it covers up the wound. And I think we will never improve as long as we're able to cover up the wound. And as I said, affirmative action is going to be abolished by the Supreme Court. It's a clear violation of equal protection. It's what Sandra Day O'Connor understood but ignored intentionally, but as an experiment. I believe it's going to be abolished, and that's going to force the elementary and high schools to get serious.